Hello and welcome back. I'm Rebecca and I'm joined by Suzanne Rebecca, who is the amazing author of a book that changed my life called What You Want Wants You. What You Want Wants You, we'll do a deep dive into it, asking Suzanne all sorts of questions about it. But what you should know right now is that it changed my life, and that at the end of reading the book, I immediately reached out to Suzanne. I typed her name into Google, tried to find her, and sent her an email and let her know this book has changed my life. I want to talk to other people who have read this book. I really believe in this message. And so a culmination of events has led me to become pretty good friends with Suzanne. And we've done quite a few things together at this point. And so I'm so delighted to welcome Suzanne to this channel. Welcome, Suzanne.
Rebecca, so good to be here. Yeah, this is a really wonderful organic evolution of our connection. So happy to be here.
As part of What You Want Wants You, we built a community and we talked to a lot of people about the book. And we kind of talked about our desires and what is coming up for us and what we want, because the title of the book is What You Want Wants You. Yeah. So the first thing that I'd like to do is talk about the path of desire, because the book really goes into the path of desire as one path that we can use kind of for our spiritual evolution or remembering. So could you talk a little bit about desire and the path of desire?
Sure. Yeah, I define desire in a very particular way, which is that it's the impulse. I say it's the impulse of love to move into life. So I consider, what my own understanding and belief is that we are all extensions of the one source. We are all individuated expressions of the one source. And it is desire. It is the desire of one source to move into expression, to experience itself in all these infinitely diverse ways, which are all of us and all that is. So yeah, so desire for me is literally that impulse. It's the life force emerging from this one source, which is love, and moving into life, into expression. And it's all about creating. It's all about experiencing, expressing, and sharing. That's what true desire is in the way I'm using the word desire. It's generative, it's life generating.
And it leads me to one of my favorite quotes from the book is a little bit of what you just said, which is the movement of love into form is life.
Yeah.
Is one of my favorite quotes from the book. And the combination of kind of reframing the word desire in my mind and realizing that, okay, if we are all aspects of the same source, then you kind of talk about how following your desire is not a selfish act. It's more than that. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. And it all hinges on this understanding that our desires, the desires that flow through us individually, are the desires of one source to express and experience itself. So that's why I think desire, following our genuine desires, can be a path of awakening, which is what my subtitle is, because as we really start to feel into the energy, this life-giving energy of desire, that's how we recognize who we really are. We really are life itself. We really are source expressing through us. And that's kind of a mind-blowing concept, but it's real and it's true in my world, in my reality.
It blew my mind and it changed my life forever. And I'm still trying, honestly, to integrate the concept. And since finding that in your book, I found it in so many other books, and it's starting to become part of my life philosophy and what my life hinges on. But it might be foreign to people who haven't read the book, or maybe people are joining us who are very familiar with this concept and not quite familiar with the way that that you present it. Can you talk a little bit more about one source and about how it animates each of us?
Well, that's probably a bigger question than I could possibly answer. And I'll just come back to it is through desire, right? It is through this, it's movement. There's a movement, I'm not a scientist, but I read as much as I can understand about quantum physics. And there literally is a quantum field of which is energetic, and in this field are these little oscillations that, they end up becoming form. And so, one source is what many of us were taught was God. It's omnipotent, it's omnipresent, it's omniscient. Like it's all pervading. Like there's nowhere that source isn't. It is all that is, literally all that is. And it's one. It's one source. There aren't two sources. There isn't good and evil. There's one source of all creation. And this one source wanted to experience itself as and through the many. And so in the way I interpret what has occurred is that I use the word intention here, that so one source then created a mechanism through which it could express itself. And that mechanism is intention, and desire is at the very heart of intention. So we are intentionally created. We are intentionally here because one source wants to, again, experience and express itself through each one of us. And it is desire that's the flow that guides us into our most fulfilled, most expressed life. I'm not sure if that even came close to answering your question, but
it's just such a huge concept, and you articulate it so well, and you articulate it so well in the book also. You walk people kind of step by step through to this. And there's this ringing of truth that I hear in myself, in my own knowing, when I read the book. And so that's why it was such a revelation to me, and just very eye-opening in a metaphorical sense. Like, wow.
I know. Well, I think I shared in the book that, early on in my journey, I found this concept. I think I was reading something from a Sufi mystic or something, that the one desires to know itself through the many. And that was my moment of, it just, like you said, it just resonated. It made me so happy. Like, all that other stuff I was taught pales in comparison to what this means to me, So yeah, that changed my life too. That understanding, that concept, that the one desired. I mean, like, this is love. Love wants to expand, but love wants to experience and express itself. And I love holding that as my truth, that I am an expression of love, and you are an expression of love, and so is everything else in this universe.
I really love it. And I really love it as a philosophy.
Yeah.
And early on in the book, you talk about having this moment where you are invited to a conference, and it's kind of a woo-woo conference. It's not really your style at the time. You are kind of, like in the corporate lane and very driven, but a friend invites you to this conference, and you have kind of this experience, this timeless moment, seeing this speaker walk onto stage. Could you narrate that story for us?
Sure. Yeah. And just to be clear, I was tiptoeing in, like I was already tiptoeing into this world that was called New Age. I'm not sure if that term was even used anymore, but, I was keeping it undercover for the most part. But this one friend she was all in, and she wasn't at all, concerned about what other people might think about it. So anyway, yeah, she was the one who knew that this author, who was Shakti Gawain, I'm not sure how well known she is now, but back in the day, she was one of the pioneers of this kind of human potential movement, this New Age movement. And I had already read at least one of her books. So I was already, I guess, like I said, tiptoeing in. And I so loved her writing, and I just so loved her message. So of course I said yes to the invitation, even though I'd never been to anything like that before. And so we went, obviously we went, and I didn't know what to expect. I'd never been to something like that. And it was a relatively small venue, actually. And they had vendors, people selling crystals and cool things like that, and hand painted silks. And so there were these vendors all around the area where the conference was taking place. And I wasn't really paying attention to time, and I was just meandering and shopping, basically. Something I knew how to do. I knew how to shop.
And so they appreciate you doing it there too.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. And then I realized, oh my gosh, it's starting. And so Shakti Gawain came out on stage, and I'd seen pictures of her, so I obviously knew it was she. However, what I was not prepared for at all was I could feel her. Like I was in the back, I was in the area behind the seating, but even from as far away as I was, I could feel her presence. And I didn't even know that word at the time, presence with a capital P. but I could feel her, and I could feel how peaceful, I could feel her peacefulness. And I had never felt such, I'd never felt that before. I just didn't. It was such a moment. And shortly after I was recognizing this is peace, I experienced what I call like a dimensional shift. And it's like we came together, or I don't even really know how to describe it, but I was her, and I knew myself as, I'm a writer, I'm a teacher. Like I just knew that I was that, not her, Shakti Gawain, but I was what she was standing there representing. So it was, and that was so unexpected. I mean, completely unexpected, because I was in the corporate world. I was a CPA and, you know, finance director, all these kind of things. And that was just one of those mystical moments that clearly changed my life. Now, as I said in the book, it was the moment passed. I came back to my regular, you know, reality, and it took me quite a long time to actually allow that, accept that, embrace that, and start taking action in that direction. But it was a moment I'll never forget.
And it's striking. It's something that I remember about your book, no matter how long it's been since I last read it. So from there, if you were able to go back to your past self after having had that moment and give her a little bit of advice about navigating to the place where it's very clear that the movement of love into form is life, and following the path of desire is this path of awakening, kind of where you are right now, would you have any advice for yourself then, when you were kind of like more stuck in this identity and kind of awakening, but not quite sure where to go next?
First thing I would say is trust those moments. Trust that kind of moment that I had. That was powerful guidance. I didn't recognize it as such at the time. So that's what I would want to say to that self, because I had many of those moments, but I kept just, oh, that was nice, boom, and I set it aside. It took me a while to realize these are my breadcrumbs. Like this is what I want to trust in. This is what is guiding me. This is life calling me. And it took me a while to figure that out. And then when I did figure it out, then I had to really learn how to trust it. But that's what I would really want to say to myself is trust in what feels wonderful. Trust in what feels nourishing. Trust in what feels life-giving. Trust in what feels exciting, you know? So yeah, that's what I would want to say most is trust in those moments of clarity. Trust in the clarity. That's telling you something really important. Yeah, that's probably the biggest message.
That's beautiful, to lean into that trust of the good feelings that you get from thinking and believing in that way.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm just realizing now, Rebecca, I want to circle back. I don't think I specifically commented on your earlier question about selfishness. That's something else I would want to say to my younger self, right? Is because that what I was sensing, feeling, starting to acknowledge that I wanted just seemed, well, it seemed more impractical than anything. But it also felt somewhat selfish because I'm trying to think. Was I still married? I don't. You know, we have the sense of responsibility. We have this sense of what we're supposed to do in life, to be responsible citizens, right? And that didn't feel that way to me. It felt like it was just all about me, you know, and some kind of crazy notion about being a writer, and that's not productive. So what I want to really emphasize within myself, what I would emphasize within myself, but to anyone who's listening, is that those desires, the ones that feel really, again, expansive, exciting, delightful, joyful. You can feel energy. You can feel energy of life in them. That's the point. They're life-giving. They're generative. When we are following our joy, which is another way of saying the same thing. Saying yes to our desire means following our joy, or our excitement, or our passion. There are different ways to say that. We are at our most clear and grounded and centered and expansive and generous. And what I've come to realize is that there really is a design here, and that what each one of us is most genuinely wanting to create, to share, to experience, that's what the rest of the world is most benefiting in receiving from us or sharing with us. So it's not random. Like our desires aren't these random things that we're going off, half-cocked, as they used to say, to follow them. No, they're part of a larger picture. They're part of a larger design, because we're all so uniquely gifted. And, our desires have a lot to do with our innate talents and gifts. So when we follow our desires, we're following the path, not only of our greatest personal fulfillment, but our greatest contribution to humanity, to the world.
And there's a very different feeling between I should and I genuinely desire.
Yes. Huge difference, right?
And I think that that's something that many of us are trying to balance and trying to maintain responsibility for the things that we should, and often to the detriment of the things that we genuinely desire. But your book's message is so freeing to say, no, the thing that you want to do, the thing that you actually want to do, that's the thing that actually gives the most,
it's the most, that's our job, is to respond to that. And by the way, I do want to, offer here, I'll do it here since you used the word thing, that desire, we aren't always aware of specific, like some people are, like that thing that came to me was very specific in a sense, right? Or teacher, right? But a lot of people, they don't have anything that define necessarily, but they have a sense of wanting more, right? They want more, whatever it might be, more creativity, more peace of mind, more clarity. So these states of being are every bit as important as, quote, a thing that we might actually want to experience. So desire encompasses all of that. And I always say to people, if you don't know what you want, don't worry about it. What you want knows what you want. There's your soul does, there's this part of you, this divine nature of yours knows exactly what you want and what's going to be the most fulfilling. So just learning how to tap into that, learning how to bring ourselves into harmony with this feeling of life, vibrancy, vitality, that kind of thing, bringing ourselves into harmony with that, then we'll start to reveal more of the specifics as we move through life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And do you think that as we start to trust and kind of lean into that path of desire, that it becomes easier, or that there's more momentum in that direction? I think that we have an identity and we have all these shoulds and we have this, okay, I've agreed to do this or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that moving toward the orientation of, okay, if I am desiring something, if I want something, and I follow that even a little bit, like, oh, I want a nap, or I need to eat lunch or whatever.
Yeah.
Even those tiny adjustments can be really fulfilling. Do they build up momentum as you choose that more?
Absolutely. That is exactly the point. And you probably remember, toward the end of the book, I suggested some practices. And one of them is the one you're describing, which is, if you don't know exactly where your life is calling you in terms of whatever it might be, a new relationship or a new type of work or a new type of creativity, start where you are and pay attention to those impulses. And I often encourage people to make choices based on whether they have an authentic impulse in the moment, the willingness, and the energy. So all three of those, they're all related, but when you consider all three, it gives you a good picture of, okay, am I doing this because I think I should, or am I doing this because this is where life is calling me? And you're right, it can be a nap. It could, that's the thing. We want to start to listen to ourselves, like stay close to ourselves. Like what's up for me in this moment? What's next for me now? Where do I have the energy for, the willingness to do, that isn't a should, right? It's got to be an authentic impulse. So practicing that really does start to, what it does is it sends a signal. It's reinforcing an understanding within us that we matter, that our energy matters, that what we want matters. So we're honoring our own flow and rhythm when we make those seemingly smaller choices. And that does create more momentum. And then we start to feel better because now we're honoring our actual rhythm and energy. And when we're feeling more rested and more alive, then we get more inspiration. We meet people that can open us to new things. So just the whole quality of our life starts to change toward one that's much more ease and grace filled.
There are a lot of words that I've gotten from you and from your book that are now part of my just daily rememberings. One of them is ease.
Yeah.
Just the path of ease.
Path of ease, please. Right?
Also, satisfaction.
Yeah.
I really liked from your book, the feeling of satisfaction and appreciation.
Appreciation. Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think is different than gratitude, even.
I believe, yes, it is. For me, it is. Often gratitude, I always think in terms of energy, because that's how I'm trained and that's how I understand the world to be. Everything is literally vibrational, including our physicality. It's actually vibration that we're perceiving as physical. And gratitude as a word and concept often has within it a recognition of something unwanted that we avoided, like, oh, like there before the grace of God. Yeah, this, we're grateful that this bad thing didn't happen that could have happened, or we're grateful that we got through a tough time. So it is not, to me, as pure. Appreciation is just, I just so value this. This really lights me up. And there's no other energy in the mix when we are feeling appreciation. But with gratitude, it can often have this other little thing in the mix, which keeps our energy sort of split. Not always. I mean, for some people, the two words are synonymous. So it isn't about the word so much as what the energy is that it conveys.
And can you talk a little bit more about energy and about vibration? I feel like you are so steeped in this world that you could maybe put words to it better than that I can at this point. Can you talk about vibration and energy and us as energetic beings?
I'll try.
It's kind of beyond words, but I think that you are very practiced at articulating it.
Well, in this moment, I'm not feeling quite that way, but because you're right, I've been so steeped in it for so long. I'm a graduate of the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. So, decades ago, I was introduced to this idea that we're not just physical, and this is before what I know now even, but there's everything that we can experience, our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our desires, our dreams, all of those things that are intangible are nonetheless real. There's an energetic reality to them. So there are literally, like, our thought forms, our energy, our heart is this huge emitter of electromagnetic energy. So we are energetic beings. We are constantly emitting signals, energetic signals. And since that time, I've learned that, maybe I quote knew it then, but now I'm really getting it, that are even like the cells, the atoms that make up the molecules in the cells, they're little vibrating spheres. And I just lost my your butt. So everything is vibration. Literally everything is vibration. Some form of energy, frequency, something vibrating. And vibration has certain properties and qualities, such as resonance. So, one of the reasons why our thoughts and feelings are so powerful in terms of the quality of life that we can create is that they are energetic and they have a certain frequency, and like frequencies gravitate toward one another. Like attracts likes, in a sense, energetically. So that's the basis of what's called the law of attraction, which not everybody wants to hear about. If you can set aside that phrase and just understand there's a basis for it, though. There's a literal scientific basis for this understanding that these energies that we can't see with our physical or touch or but they're real. And thankfully, there are a lot of people now that are measuring these things, like Dr. Joe Dispenza and Dawson Church, and there are tons of scientists now who are on board with this understanding that we are vibrational beings. And they're starting to measure these various energy fields. So when you start to grasp that and you realize, oh, I'm not a physical being separate from this other physical being, and I don't have to push and force to make things happen. We're actually all connected through these force fields of creation within the large quantum field. And, we're communicating and connecting and conveying information and energy all the time. So our thoughts are having an effect always on the thought forms in the collective consciousness, and vice versa. So it really matters, like how we vibrate, which really translates to what do I believe? What's my perspective on the world? What kind of thoughts do I entertain? How do I feel? All those things are not just contained in our own experience, all of those vibrations are emanating, and they're literally affecting and influencing all the vibrations in, again, the collective human consciousness. So they really matter, and they matter to us. Once we realize that it isn't just what I'm doing that's creating my reality, it's how I'm vibrating that's drawing things to me, or not. Maybe things aren't coming to me that otherwise I would want to come, because I'm not in harmony with them vibrationally.
And you talk a lot about, you kind of give a framework in the book. You kind of walk people to this point, and then you give a lot of very practical thoughts or ways to think about this, and things that you can practice in order to further your practice of this. So I kind of want to go into that a little bit. Are there any of those that are that you recommend frequently to your coaching clients or to people that are interested in this type of work?
Sure. Although I have to say that the way I structured the book the way I did for a reason. And part one, as you remember, is the conceptual framework. It talks all about this kind of thing that we're kind of dipping our toes into here. And there's a reason I put that first, because if you just dive into the practical things that we can do without the understanding of how it all fits in, it'll have limited effect, right? Because so the understanding the conceptual framework, understanding that we are vibrational beings, understanding that our point of power is right here, right now, understanding that we are emanations of one source. We are so worthy. We are inherently, divinely worthy. So understanding the framework within which these practices are offered is hugely important, because I really do want people to actually reflect on, wow, if that's true, what does that mean for me? Like, what, so the concepts are really important. But
I agree. And I think that we can pause, because I think that what you were just explaining before about us being vibrational and all these things, there's kind of a way that you approach life when you think, okay, I'm separate from everything else and I can influence other things, but I have to do it in, the ways that I've been taught.
Right.
Versus completely rewiring your understanding of who you are and what the world is. And then there's kind of this ease. There's a path of more ease that you can take to where you want to go. And I think that those are very different. And you mentioned the power of now as you were just talking. And that is another thing that really stands out to me, is your conceptualization of now, and your conceptualization of, if you want to do anything, it's now, it's now, it's now.
Yes. Our creative power, our power to create exists right here, right now, which has many nuances of meaning, right? But when I say that, among other things, I mean, there's I think the pretty widespread understanding now that if our minds are wound up in the past, that all we're doing is what we're doing vibrationally is we're activating thoughts about the past, which we may or may not want to be experiencing in our present or in our future, right? So when we're out of the present moment and thinking about the past or the future, we're actually then, by virtue of our focus, which is happening in the present. So here it is, it's this time, this moment, but my mind is somewhere in the past or somewhere in the future. Well, but I'm vibrating now. It's my thoughts. I'm focusing there, and I'm vibrating along with the quality of whatever those memories are or whatever those thoughts are. So if I'm worried about the future or I'm feeling regret about the past, those qualities of worry and regret are having an effect on my energy field now. And so they're affecting what I can now have access to in terms of inspiration, or have access to in terms of who I bump into today. So it's really important that we, again, kind of stay close to ourselves and really ask, how am I feeling? What could I give myself to help myself feel better? Just stay close, be willing to make small adjustments to how we're thinking or focusing or what we're doing in order to maintain a vibrational state of being that is in harmony with the kind of life we want, peaceful, expanded, open, loving, whatever that might be. We want to be intentionally cultivating that in the now, in this now, because this now then sets the vibrational tone for the next now, and, you know, and so forth and so on. Yeah.
And so I definitely encourage people to read the book, because I think it's one of those books that, for me, I opened it up and then I just devoured it. Like, I just couldn't get enough of it. I read it from cover to cover in a very short amount of time. And I think that you'll probably either open it up and it will be like that type of experience for you, or you're not ready for it and, you know, like, you can come back to another time. But I do encourage people to get the book and read the book and try to just be aware of the concepts that you present and integrate them as much as possible. But I think that I interrupted you before, you know, giving that preface to, if you try to do these very tangible practices,
Yes,
they probably won't be as effective if you just do them after listening to this versus reading the book and understanding, kind of getting a grasp on these principles first.
Right. So then you know why the practices are suggested as they are. I wanted to share one, if I may, Rebecca, that's not in the book. It's a great example of the difference between living from a standpoint of I'm a physical being separate from other physical beings versus I'm an energetic being and we're all connected, right? And the example, what the practice is particularly effective when you're having some difficulty with someone in your life. You know, and
that never happens.
Yeah, no, that never happens. But if it might. So, you know, so how we normally try to resolve it, we're like, that's a separate person. I'm over here, and let me try to convince him or her. Like we go at it with conversation, maybe, or, you know, some kind of communication directly to them at the level of their physicality and their personality, right? And
I frequently agonize about those conversations, and I'm like, okay, what I know about them, what I know about me, I'm not trying to change them, but I just want to shift this. Like, I just want to feel like we're more connected or that we're more aligned, are words that I use all the time. And I frequently am like, okay, this is a separate person than me. They have different conceptualizations than I do. I need to like prepare some sort of rational argument or get us to a place where we can like feel connected so that we can move forward. I frequently think about it in these like, okay, this is a separate person than me. And that's a great example of when you read the book, you can shift that mindset and then have access to practices like the one that you're
that I'm about to share. Yeah, exactly. And actually, I hope I remember to circle back on what you just said. So the practice is, especially, and this is especially helpful, I think, with people that you've known for a while, you know, although it doesn't have to be, because I have an example of where that wasn't the case. But the idea is we try things at the level of physical personality cells, and there's already some kind of static or conflict there. So we're not making progress. So the opportunity that we have, once we understand who we really are and who they really are, we can go within ourselves, when we create a quiet moment, take the time. It doesn't have to be a lot of time to get centered, go into the heart, get calm, you know, remind yourself of things, you know, okay, we're all doing the best we can here. Just kind of, you know, just getting yourself in a place of peacefulness and acceptance. And then when you feel peaceful and clear, then call that person into your mind and have a conversation with them there. And rather than thinking in terms of, oh, I have to convince them, I have to influence them, it's from the heart. The huge difference is we're not trying to manipulate an outcome. There's no agenda. There's just an intention to share from my heart. And we can say things like, you know, I love when such and such happens. And then when you do this, I feel this. You can say the kind of things that you'd want to be able to say and be heard at the level of personality, but it hasn't worked yet, right? So you can just have a heart-to-heart with this person. And I'm always pleasantly surprised. I don't know why I'm surprised when I suggest this to clients, how well it works. It's just because what can happen, the main thing that it does is it changes our vibration. So we're no longer thinking of them as unwilling to be with us, or, you know, we're thinking of them, we're feeling them differently. We're actually connecting with the highest and best in them. We're connecting with their heart. And so we feel differently about them. And because we are all connected, you know, if there's been an energetic dynamic, well, one person changes the dynamic, the dynamic now has changed. So the other person, it creates an opening, a vibrational opening for the other person to shift. And there have been times where the other person actually comes and, and opens up and, initiates the conversation that we've been wanting to have, or, something really actually tangible happens. But at the very least, what happens is that it's a way to help us feel more in harmony with those in our life. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And it feels healing, even just on the level of, I love that you prefaced it with, well, first of all, read the book. Second, getting calm and finding that state of peace and heart-centeredness.
Yes.
Before calling that person into our imagination.
Exactly.
And having that conversation that we desire to have with them.
Yes.
In real life. And so you're saying that after some of your clients do that, or after you've done that in the past, that person spontaneously sometimes comes in.
And so, yeah, and I'll share the experience from my life where I had two. I'm trying to get over the details, but there were two people. It was when I was starting my business, and they were vendors. They were providing services to me, and they needed to work together. I hired them separately, but there was a project where they needed to work together, and they were not working together. And it was of a technical nature, and they would each tell me what the other one was doing wrong, but the technology piece didn't meet. I couldn't help. I couldn't, facilitate or moderate, because I didn't understand the nature of the work that they needed to get done. I just knew that they were each blaming the other for it not getting done. It just kept not getting done. And I was really frustrated. And of course, I tried, to be diplomatic and talk to this one and talk to that one. But meanwhile, my own energy, right, is we have conflict here that I have to resolve. So I'm still vibrating with, there's something wrong that needs to be fixed. So I remember, I don't even know what prompted me. It doesn't really matter. So I did what I just described to you, and I sat down, I got really quiet. And in this case, I started by acknowledging that they both wanted to help me. They both were there for me. And I so appreciated that they both wanted to provide good client service. And they both, that was, they both do provide great client service. So I just focused on what I so appreciated about both of them to get myself out of that, well, somebody's screwing up here. So, so I got myself totally out of that whole mindset and just focusing on the goodness in them. And then I had this conversation where I said, I know you both want to do the best for me. And the best way you can do that is to work with each other. So I had this conversation with them in my heart and in my mind. And within a day, it turned around and they started working together. Wow. It was, and this was after, a while where it had gone nowhere. It was not moving at all, So, yeah.
And I think that we've all had work tensions where we're like, we have to work with this other person, but we don't gel, and we have to do this project together. Yeah. And how cool that you could take yourself, because it works on at least two levels. You are, by getting calm and having this heart-centered imaginary conversation, you are putting yourself in a different place with regard to both yourself and your feelings about the situation.
Yes.
And both of them. And then it feels like there's even more happening on this level where you're not even in real life or in 3D, sitting down with each of them, having a conversation, mediating it all together. You just do this in your heart-centered imagination. And then there are some tangible effects that you see.
Because it's all energy. That's what I wanted to bring up as an example. If you don't believe that imagination is energy, this doesn't make sense, right? But if you understand that every aspect of our beingness, our imagination, our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings, all of that has an energetic reality to it. And those energies are, influencing, we're in contact with each other all the time. So how we perceive a person, how we think about them, how we feel about them has a huge effect on how they respond to us. So yeah, it doesn't always yield that, but at the very least, it does yield that first level that you just talked about. It helps us to feel more the way we want to feel in our world, And
that's huge. And that's huge. That's kind of another topic that I wanted to talk to you about, because earlier in my life, personally, I had some emotions that I feel very comfortable feeling currently. and some emotions that I'm still scared of or I feel are inappropriate to express, and I try not to feel them. And I'm, after your book and many other things that have come my way, I'm opening to the idea of feelings, of feeling all the feelings, and of thinking of feelings as a tool that I can use to kind of move through life and understand what is true to me and what I want more of and what I want less of.
Yes.
And your work was really instrumental in helping me to open up to that. Could you say a little bit about feelings? Has your orientation toward feelings shifted through this work? And how do you see feelings, like those feelings that, you know, are uncomfortable to experience, but are part of the human experience?
Have the most, you know, I was fortunate, of course, to have studied energy healing with a master healer who was also a physicist. And she had a very particular understanding of the energy of emotion. And then I learned from another wonderful teacher, Esther Hicks, who communicates with this intelligence called Abraham. And that was really the clarity really sunk in, that our emotions, I'm not going to distinguish emotions from like intuition. And there are different things that we can feel, but let's talk about emotions such as anger, frustration, happiness, contentment. So if you think of an emotional scale where the low point is despair, and it moves up into maybe, you know, whatever, anger, frustration, revenge, but then frustration, worry, and now we're up into contentment. So it goes all the way up to joy and bliss, right? The higher we are on the scale, what that means is when we're feeling the way that at the top of the scale, that means we're in harmony with one source, in harmony with our own, what I call the expanded self, the divine self. And the further down we are on the emotional scale, that means it's in some way, the way we're perceiving the situation that's triggering the feeling, in some way that is not in harmony with how our expanded self is seeing the situation. So all emotions are information. They're a way of alerting us when we might need to make a course correction in terms of our perception. And that example we just talked about is a great one. Like I was perceiving those two. I was frustrated. And I was assuming that they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. So those thoughts are not in harmony with how my expanded self sees them, because my expanded self sees them, you know, more the way I did when I got into my heart. Like if they're both trying their best. You know, so the expanded self always has the most loving, the most generative, the most inclusive view. And when we're holding thoughts that are counter to that, we're going to feel something uncomfortable. And so it's important that we not hide our feelings or suppress our feelings, because they have information for us. Now, sometimes that information isn't what it might appear to be. Like I remember when I was in the corporate world and I didn't like where I was. And I was just frustrated. I wanted to get out, but of course I had all these beliefs. Anyway, I was making it about the senior executives and how they were running the company. And if only they would just change the way they were running the company, it would be better for all of us. And so I had this whole thing going, this whole story going, that it was all about the senior executives and it was all their fault. And of course, again, I was feeling frustrated because my expanded self wasn't seeing things that way at all. And what I discovered was the real thing that was causing me pain was that my own belief that I had to stay there. Like, this is what work is. I was believing that I didn't have any choice. I had to stay there. I had to stay in a place I didn't want to work. And it's like, no, I don't have to. Like, so the uncomfortable feeling was my invitation to lift up the covers and say, all right, what's under here? Like, what am I assuming here that may or may not be serving me at this point?
And I think that I'm sure that resonates with a lot of people. I'm sure we've all been in a situation in our life where we kind of feel trapped or we feel uncomfortable in some way, whether it's in a job or probably in relationships. And it's just a matter of switching our mindset, shifting our mindset just a little bit. But I love what you say about the expanded self and about how you can know that your expanded self sees things a certain way because you're feeling certain emotions.
Right. Like if we didn't have, that's the whole point, because the emotions are registering the difference between the expanded self vibration of love and our current vibration, right? That's what they're meant. That's what they're revealing. That's what the emotions are actually telling us. And again, we want to bring great compassion to ourselves in acknowledging our own feelings of anger or frustration. I think one of the most helpful things we can do when we feel uncomfortable emotions about something is just say, okay, what is this showing me that I really want? What is it showing me that I really want? Because let's face it, we get triggered into things like anger when we see things that are just horrifying, or that are just unjust in our own view of things, right? So it isn't that we're trying to convince ourselves that something that we see that we don't like, we should like it. That's not it at all. It's just that we don't want to keep pushing against what we don't like, because what we resist persists. Like, that's the other thing about energy, is when you understand energy and you come across something that you don't like, what most of us do is we talk about why we don't like it, and we let ourselves we kind of build up that negative energy, and we justify why we don't like it, and we prove why it's wrong. And all that does energetically, vibrationally, is keep all that active. And so the opportunity for us, when we start to feel that uncomfortable emotion, is to pause before it gets, too far down the road, and just ask, what is this showing me that I really want? And even if it's something, quote, outside of us, you see somebody mistreated and it hurts you, or it hurts my heart, or it outrages me or something. I've learned to just pause and breathe and let the feeling run its course, and ask, what is this showing that I really want? What matters to me? Peace, mutual respect, harmony, and just even naming those things. When we ask the question and we name an answer and we let ourselves feel it, now we've pivoted. Now we've moved away from, pushing against what we don't want and making that bigger. And now we're moving toward, here's what I stand for. Here's what matters to me. And if we can keep that going, if we can start to cultivate those qualities more actively in our own lives, our own world, now that's what we're feeding into the grid. And it's helping everyone.
And can you talk a little bit about feeding into the grid? You have a beautiful metaphor in your book.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can describe it, or you can describe it, but it's so beautiful. It's this metaphor of multicolored lights that are powered by the same source, the same, electrical source in the metaphor, but the metaphor takes it to one source, and we're each one of these lights. So you talk about feeding energy into the grid. Can you take that analogy and kind of tell us a little bit about feeding that energy into the grid, and how what we do on an individual level affects that collective consciousness?
Yeah. And actually that particular metaphor, well, I love it too. That may not be the best, but I'll start there. So this tapestry or kaleidoscope of, like, we're each a light. And as we plug in fully to the source, our light shines beautifully and evenly, and it's brilliant and radiates. And then when we're all plugged in, this lovely kaleidoscope, this tapestry of light and color is created. The thing is, though, we all have free will, so we can choose whether or not we're plugged in, and we can choose how deeply we're plugged in. We can, so we have the choice about whether we are availing ourselves of this unlimited energy source or not. And when we're not fully plugged in, then our light is dim, or it flickers, or it isn't the same light that would otherwise be available. And none of us can plug someone else in, right? That's their choice. However, when we're plugged in and we're shining brightly, what that can do, since we're all in the same tapestry, then others can see that, they can feel, so this is where it starts to be a little harder to make this work. But it's meant to be. So my light is kind of dim, and I see everybody else's light all brightly lit. I might want to ask them, how do you do that? So that's the idea, that just by our example, right, just by our living in a way that allows us to share the best of who we are, that's uplifting to those around us. But even more than that is this idea that we even in that example, it's sort of like separate lights, but in reality, we are each energy fields, and our energy fields are overlapping and interconnecting. So when any one of us chooses to create a vibrational state of being that feels like peace, or feels like clarity, or feels like mutual respect, or feels like harmony, that frequency now is vibrating more strongly. We've amplified it. And so now that makes it easier for others to recognize it, to feel it, to sense it, to come up to it. So that's what I mean by feeding energy into the grid, that the stability of our own vibration then emanates out and affects other vibrations, like a tuning fork would affect a nearby guitar string or something. It's that idea of resonance and being able to radiate or feed this energy outward that then makes it easier for other people to tap into it.
I've definitely experienced that. I've definitely experienced being that, light that's kind of shining and that people all kind of raise to. And I've experienced it the other way around, where you just feel somebody else's energy and you're like, oh, that's so nice. Like, oh, okay, I can feel that way too.
Yes, exactly.
So I have a question for you though, because I don't think that I don't know the answer to this. Do you think that it matters, like your physical location to the other person? I felt this when I walk into a room. I know that I felt this physically, and you talk about our energy fields kind of, overlapping. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Do you think that it also works over long distances? And do you think that it works with people that you have spent a lot of time with, but you're not in the same physical location? Could you speak to that?
I'm not an expert on this. Of course, not an expert on any of that, but the answer is yes. Physical proximity does make it easier for most of us to sense energy because it does have an actual, if we're sensitive, we actually really can learn to sense kinesthetically someone's energy field. And it's also true that that because all of our fields are emanations from the field, the one source, the quantum vacuum, which exists outside of time and space. It is not subject to linear time or to physical space. So through the field, we are all connected all the time. And there is so we can actually think of someone, and this is what telepathy and other kinds of things are all about. We can actually think of someone, and they could actually pick up an image of us in their mind. I mean, there are all kinds of things that are possible here. We can definitely, and we can sense how someone else is feeling, even if they're nowhere near us. Especially, as you said, if it's somebody that we're in long-term relationship with, we can read their energy. We know what it feels like, and even if they're physically distant, their vibrations are still affecting the field, and we can tap into the field. So yeah, it's what this opens up when you really start to explore what it means to be a vibrational being, what it means to be an emanation from the one source, the one quantum vacuum, the one field. It's a complete reorientation.
And for me, your book was kind of, I've heard an author say that in order to access that feeling or access that higher vibration, or kind of like that, sometimes you feel the divine. And she says that she will read some of the works that she's found really inspiring, and that you can kind of ride in on the coattails of people that have felt that before you. Yes. And I just want to tell you that your book does that for me. You were so articulate about each of these things, and there's so much intention with which you wrote the book, and the organization of the book really lends itself to just kind of finding that flow and feeling for what is true, even if it's not something that you currently believe or that you've never heard about. But that kind of opens you up to other concepts, other ideas.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, that was certainly my intention. It's just to offer a perspective that I have found to be so much more loving, so much more effective in creating a fulfilled life,
and liberating too.
And liberating. Yes. All those things. Yes.
So I know that you also do coaching in addition to being an accomplished author. Now you also do one-on-one coaching and group coaching. Can you tell us a little bit about that practice, like what that's like for your clients? Because I'm assuming that some of the people that watch this are going to say, wow, I want more of this type of feeling, and I'd like to have somebody that I can ask my questions to around these things.
Yes. I now refer to myself as a mentor, just because I think the coaching industry is so huge, and it means a very particular thing. That's not exactly what I'm doing. I'm not trained as a coach. I'm trained as an energy healer and spiritual teacher. So what I do, but there's a lot of coaching, there's a lot of overlap for sure. But it really is more like what you're saying. It's a chance for people to ask questions of someone who has devoted her life to understanding these things and living these principles and seeing how they work. So it's so the mentoring is definitely just to help people who are open to these concepts, who perhaps many of them have already tried to apply them or are already fully, accepting of them, but just haven't quite, fully implemented all the implications of understanding these things. So, and this is especially true when people want to make changes in their lives, and when they want to find out who they really are, and what kind of work they're here to do, and what's their purpose here, or how can they create greater peace of mind. So people that have a sense of wanting more at any level, this is the conversation. These are the kind of conversations that we have, and I help people really connect in. In the sessions, I can teach people things that we don't have time for here, about help them learn how to develop their own sensitivity to their own, the energy of desire and the energy of their intuition, and how to shift from focusing on through the mind on a goal forward, as opposed to listening from the heart and being led in this flow of life itself. So I help them make that orientation shift that we've been talking about, with, give them practices. It's a conversation, the sessions are really a conversation. And sometimes people come in with questions, or they have very specific questions, and it's more of they're asking and I'm answering. Other times they're more open to hearing from me about certain perspectives and how that might help them in their world. So it really depends on what somebody's looking for. But in general, what I describe my work as helping people wake up to who they really are, help people discover more of their magnificence. And they can do that through their desires. That's one way, that's a huge way to do it. Discover our gifts and talents by virtue of where our desires are calling us. So it's helping people wake up to who they really are as extensions of the one source, and their unique path of contribution and fulfillment. So yeah, the one-on-one are so great. I love my clients. It's just so rich. And I will occasionally offer a group class on a particular topic, such as I did one recently on the art of agelessness. I'm teaching one now called Follow the Energy, learning about how to really sense into the energy flows. And they're usually on Zoom. So, and they're fun, very fun. Great opportunity to meet like-minded and like-hearted individuals.
And I think that's so helpful, because I think my experience, having read the book, I was like, okay, well, now who can I talk to
about this, right? Yeah.
I'm going to send copies of the book to everybody that I know, but who can I actually have a dialogue with about this? And I think that it's different having a dialogue with somebody that just got exposed to this concept versus somebody who has had a lot of time to think about it and guide other people to that place, and is so practiced in energy work to be able to meet people where they are. And
yes,
I highly recommend that if you're feeling a desire to work with Suzanne or reach out to Suzanne. I did after reading her book, and it's led me down a really fruitful path. So if you are interested in learning more, definitely visit Suzanne's website. It is her name, SuzanneEater.com, and you can find her there, and also get a copy of What You Want Wants You there as well.
Yes.
To kind of finish us up, Suzanne, you've talked to me a lot about desire. And when I first heard desire, I thought, okay, that really big thing that you've always wanted, but you've kind of been scared to do. That was my immediate take on desire.
Mm-hmm.
But you've taught me that desire is so much more than that, and so much less than that. So
right.
Can you kind of, to close us out, guide us toward, like, how can we access what we desire right now in this moment to take the first tiny step toward that?
There are a couple ways. One is what I've learned is many people actually do already know what they want. They just haven't acknowledged it yet, but their heart of hearts knows. So the most direct way to do it, and this, I'm putting my hand here because this, in the energy system of a human, this is considered the high heart or the seat of the soul, and it carries our longings. And so it's helpful to actually make physical contact right here and just say, okay, in my heart of hearts, what do I already know I want? And be willing to be surprised. Be willing to be surprised. And the other way is what we talked about earlier, is just staying close to yourself and following your energy by using those criteria, the authentic impulse, the energy, the willingness. Let yourself make choices, small choices throughout your day that are self-honoring, that honor your true preferences, honor your true energy. Because the more you do that, again, the more you're reinforcing this idea that I matter and what I want matters. And that sets up a nice vibrational receiving mode within you, so that you can actually then recognize your own like larger desires and things that you might want.
That's so beautiful. Well, I hope that we get to have many more conversations like this, but thank you for being my first guest on this channel. And yeah, thank you for the radiance that is the unique signature that is you. You're such a gift to the world.
Oh, Rebecca, so are you. Your light shines so brightly, and I'm honored to be here. And I wanted to make one final comment. The book is available, print, ebook, and audio. And a lot of people really prefer audiobooks these days. So it's available in all 3 formats. So I hope you will feel inspired to pick it up or listen to it.
And I read it as an ebook, and then I got a physical copy, and I'll probably get the audiobook too, because it's just helpful when you're in the car or when you're on the move or when you're taking a walk, to have these words and just kind of plug them into your ears and almost be transported to that place.
That's so yes, thank you. And thank you, Rebecca. I wish you just incredible fulfillment and success with this channel. I know you'll experience it.
Thanks. Well, I do too, because what you want wants you. So
that's right.
It's already out there.
It's out there. That's right. And it's in here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me, Suzanne.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.